Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar on maximising the potential of more sustainable journeys. Firstly, I want to say a huge thank you to the sponsors of today's event, SmartTrack. We wouldn't be able to run our webinars and other events without the support of corporate partners like them. If it's your first time attending one of our webinars, Global Fleet Champions is a partnership campaign administered by BRAKE, the road safety charity, to prevent deaths, injuries and pollution caused by vehicles being driven for work. To learn more about the work that we do and to access the fleet safety resources and more events, please visit globalfleetchampions.org. And if you're not already a member, you can sign up for free on the website. And BRAKE is a road safety charity working to prevent road deaths and injuries, make communities safer, and support people bereaved and injured in crashes through a range of initiatives, including our events, awards, and resources for fleet professionals. We also run initiatives such as Road Safety Week in New Zealand, Beat Beat Days for young children, and we provide free support resources to people who've been bereaved in crashes. So moving on straight on to our first of today's speakers, I'm delighted to introduce David Gaffney. David is Business Development Manager at SmartTrack, working across the public and private sectors to help organisations understand and optimise their fleets. Today, he'll be sharing how fleets can bridge the gap between measuring and reducing emissions and what practical steps can turn sustainability from a compliance challenge into a commercial advantage. So thank you, David. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you, Caroline.
Great, and I'll hand over to you.
Okay. Great. So I want to start with something that's familiar to pretty much everybody, is that introduction of sustainability managers. We start to deal with them a lot more these days. And quite recently, we met a sustainability manager who was telling us quite proudly that we're tracking our emissions now. They have the beautiful dashboard full of the CO2 data. But when we do ask them, okay, so what are you actually doing to reduce it? There's pretty much silence, and that's not actually unusual. Globally, across Australia and New Zealand, fleets are under a lot of pressure to hit sustainability targets, but many are still stuck between that measurement and action. So they can see the emissions, but they still don't know yet how to shrink them. The common go-to we see is let's get EVs or let's get hybrids. I know fleets that we deal with have rolled out plug-in hybrids because they looked great on paper. So you're looking at 1.3 litres per 100 kilometres, and that does look really good. But the reality can be quite different. When you actually look at the fuel usage data, fuel for them was actually close to 9 litres per 100 kilometres. And why is that? The vehicles were actually driven predominantly on long motorway runs, hardly ever plugged in. So the benefit that they thought they were getting was a real mismatch in needs. They'd effectively bought expensive petrol cars with batteries. And it's not just about the vehicle type. You're actually going to see a lot of waste in plain sight. So vehicles idling for hours, pool cars sitting and charged all day but barely used, drivers plugging in every trip, even when they don't need to. And it's a lot of small stuff, and all this small stuff adds up to thousands of dollars and tons of CO2 each year. And the timing matters, I think, for everybody, because right now every fleet decision does count. So budgets are tightening, sustainability targets are firming up, and the vehicles that you're choosing now will probably be with you in 2028, 2030. So if you're not using the real world data to guide those choices, it's pretty easy to overinvest in chargers, underutilize EVs, and miss the ROI that actually convinced the business in the first place. So today's session is going to be about moving from the knowing to the doing. It's about understanding what the numbers actually mean, where the waste is hiding, and how to use that visibility to make better decisions. So if the challenge is turning visibility into action, the next question is, well, what's actually getting in the way? When we look across those fleets that we work with, from councils to large corporates, we do see some common themes, and I've picked 4 themes that keep coming up, and I want to unpack those a little bit with everybody here today. First one would be fleet visibility and data. So knowing what's actually happening. So usage patterns, emissions, idling, the true efficiency. So you can say that you can't manage what you can't measure. So we do ask fleet teams how well they know their vehicles. Almost everybody says, yeah, pretty well. But when you actually dig into it about things like how many kilometers are business versus personal, which vehicles are sitting idle 2/3 of the week, which pool cars burn the most fuel, the answer is quite often, yeah, actually, we're not sure about that. When we talk about sustainable fleets, I think I may have missed a slide here. When we talk about sustainable fleets, more people jump into electric vehicles, but the truth is sustainability starts with how you use what you already have. You might look at your monthly report and you see things like healthy fleet average, say 80% utilization. I think, great, we're in good shape, but there's a catch. Averages can pretty much lie. So when you dig deeper in and visualize trip data, you might often find that a handful of vehicles are being constantly used, booked solid every day, while others haven't moved in weeks. And that's where the insight starts, because you can't see who's using what, where, and how often. You can make smarter decisions and save some serious money. When you dig a bit deeper and you pull your trip data and GPS reports and look for any vehicles with low trips or no movement at all. And that matters. Each of these vehicles, idle vehicles, still contributes to carbon footprint through production, servicing, and standby emissions, even when it's not driven. So if you're redeploying or retiring vehicles, you're not only cutting costs, you're actively reducing life cycle emissions and freeing up capital for other investments. Booking behavior. Oh, so I think I've missed a step here. So booking behavior. So next, actually, what you're looking to do is book into actual trip data. Do some vehicles get booked constantly, but travel with only a few kilometers and not move at all? And why that matters is that's a signal of inefficiency. So it's often cultural and it's not even operational. So people hold on to vehicles with that just in case mentality, and that creates that artificial demand, and that drives up fleet size. So when you surface the data and change those habits, you can often operate at 10 to 20% fewer vehicles and still hit the same service levels. And that's a sustainability win. Fewer cars manufactured, fewer tires replaced, fewer liters of fuel burned, and fewer batteries made. Check the cost of underuse, both in dollars and carbon. Take the vehicles you've identified as underutilized, run the numbers. So what's the annual cost in leases, insurance, maintenance, and fuel? Then estimate the annual emissions, so production, standby, and operational. So all of that matters, because what you're doing is you're putting a carbon value next to a dollar value, and that helps it build a business case for sustainability. When you can, say by removing 3 idle vehicles, you can say we've saved $100,000 and cut 30 tons of CO2. You can connect with finance on sustainability in the same story, and that's really powerful. What you should also do is measure the impact and keep improving. So once you've optimized your fleet, keep tracking utilization every single quarter. Watch out for patterns. Are you trending towards smaller fleets, higher sharing, and lower idle times? That's important because sustainability isn't a one-off project. It's a continuous optimization. Visibility, it lets you move from reaction to strategy. So every vehicle serves a clear purpose. Every trip adds value. Every decision is supported by data. Shared usage and utilization. So once you've actually got visibility, the next question is, are we using that visibility to share better? Because having data is one thing, using it to change behavior is another. And in most organizations, that's where the real opportunity is hiding. So many fleets already have the right number of vehicles. And I know in New Zealand, a lot actually have a lot of surplus. The real inefficiency sits in how vehicles are actually shared. So what to check for? So check for how long bookings actually last. So what you're looking for is the average booking length compared to engine on time or trip duration. So you'll often find that vehicles are reserved for a full day or large periods of time, but actually driven for only a small portion. And that matters because that's a system-driven waste problem. So placeholder bookings create artificial demand to force fleets to grow when they don't actually have to. So by surfacing that mismatch, you can actually reclaim a lot of hours of idle time without buying or even cutting a single car. So from a sustainability point of view, that means you've got fewer vehicles manufactured, fewer tires produced, and less carbon emitted simply by improving access patterns. And check who's booking and when. So analyze the booking data by team, by site, or by function. So are some departments sitting on vehicles while others are actually scrambling to get access to those vehicles? And that matters because it can create an imbalance that drives an unnecessary expansion across the fleet. So by breaking down those silos, allowing transparent cross-team visibility, you can actually balance the demand naturally. So people book what's genuinely available when they truly need it. It's resource sharing and it's sustainability strategy. So better utilization, lower emissions, less frustration. And checking your booking rules and automation. So audit the system itself. So can users book all day by default? Do bookings automatically release if vehicles aren't collected? Are people encouraged to estimate realistic duration? So these small configuration changes can actually lift utilization by double digits. So culturally, it signifies fairness. Everyone has access to the same pool. No one owns the car. And that's how to build a lean, equitable, low carbon fleet that still delivers operational kind of freedom. So once you get to the point where you've actually squeezed every bit of value from the vehicles you already have, you need to right size your fleet. So improved sharing and lifted utilization. The next question becomes, which of these vehicles are ready to transition? And that's where we move from efficiency to potential electrification. Because true sustainability, it's not just about doing less, it's about doing smarter with what's next. So EV adoption should never be a guessing game. It really is a data-driven decision. So check your trip profiles and your duty cycle. So look at how far each vehicle travels on a typical day. Where does it spend its downtime? Is it short, repeatable routes? Because that regular return to base pattern, that's ideal EV candidate. And that matters because range anxiety disappears when the data actually proves that the vehicle's daily needs is well within the EV's range. Check your site's readiness and look for utilization overlap. So use your utilization data to identify which sites have vehicles sitting idle for long periods and could easily support charging. So pair this with parking location data or even home-based reporting. And it matters because charging infrastructure is often the biggest barrier. But your own data can actually tell you where chargers will have the most impact. Is it at home? Is it public? Is it private? That ensures infrastructure cost and spending goes exactly where it's needed. So where vehicles naturally dwell. So not where it's most convenient to install. And the fourth factor is investment and ROI alignment. Because no matter how passionate we're all about sustainability, if the numbers don't add up, the momentum dies pretty much after the pilot. So electrification and optimization both have to stack up commercially. So you'll hear from many as a fleet manager. So we've looked at the total cost of ownership, fuel, maintenance, lease, and our EVs are about 15% cheaper after 2 years, but only because they've actually picked the right vehicles. And that's actually the key. When data-driven utilization meets smart leasing, the business case actually becomes bulletproof. So short trips with regular return to base charging deliver quick payback. Long rural routes without infrastructure don't. Other organizations that use SmartTrack Sleep Snapshot to compare running costs, they actually found several sedans that were costing more in depreciation than they were in saving emissions. So they right-sized fewer, newer, lower emission vehicles and hit both sustainability and financial targets. So things to look out for is checking your total cost of ownership. So pull together fuel, maintenance, lease, depreciation data for each vehicle, so ICE and EV, And that all matters because it's the total cost of ownership that reveals the economics of sustainability. Sometimes the greener choice is also the cheaper one, but only if you've actually matched the right vehicle to the right job. So when the TCO and utilization align, EVs prove their worth quickly, and funding future transitions become easy to justify. And check the ROI by vehicle category and use case. So segment that fleet, pools, pool cars, service vans, utes, executive vehicles, then compare emission output against cost per kilometre. You'll see pretty much instantly where the money and carbon overlap. So right size fleets spend less per trip, emit less CO2, and actually age more gracefully. So meaning fewer replacements, fewer leases, less embedded carbon over time. So there's 4 levers that we really talked about. So that's visibility, utilization, transition, and ROI. So each one of them strengthens the other. Together they form the backbone of a modern, sustainable fleet. And how these affect everybody is every organization, pretty much on this call, I would assume, is somewhere on that journey. Some of you are still building that visibility, others are planning the next EV step. The point is these factors aren't theoretical, they're already shaping your budgets, emission profiles, even driver satisfaction. So without clear visibility, you're managing blind. Without shared use, you're carrying hidden waste. Without readiness data, you risk overinvesting in chargers or actually buying the wrong vehicles. And without ROI tracking, sustainability can actually feel like a cost, not like a benefit. So if I was to leave you with 4 simple takeaways, you don't need to remember everything on the report or every data point today. The 4 kind of things you can take away straight away are review your utilization data. So identify underused or duplicate vehicles. Number 2, encourage shared use. So make access easy, transparent, and data-driven. 3, use trip data to plan your EV rollout. So start where range and charging already fit. Number 4, align your investment and ROI. So track the costs and carbon side by side. So if you do these 4 things, guaranteed emissions will go down, efficiency will go up, and the conversation with leadership changes from compliance to opportunity. And that's it for me today. So if you want to explore how any of these insights might actually apply to your organization, you can reach out to myself or pretty much anybody in the SmartTrack team. And I'll hand back over to Caroline.
Thanks, David. That's great. There were some really useful points in there, really interesting to hear about all of that. So thank you for that. We will move straight along. Any questions that you have for David, please do put them in the Q&A and we can put those through at the discussion at the end. So our next speaker is Kirsten Corson. Kirsten's been steadily creating change in the sustainable mobility space in New Zealand and co-founding Zilch Carbon Asset Management and Sustainable Fleet Finance businesses. She now leads micromobility, locking and e-bike charging station company Lockydocs. And as well as that, she's also the board chair of Drive Electric, an industry group accelerating the uptake of e-mobility. It's hard to find a more passionate person about e-mobility in New Zealand. I've known Kirsten for a few years, and she's certainly one of the most passionate people out there. So she's going to share a few thoughts on why it's so important. Thanks, Kirsten.
Thanks, Caroline, and thanks, David. I agree with you completely, everything that you said along there. Great advice. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in today. We're just going to have a look at, I guess, the big picture reasons why it's so important, and then just the micro reasons around why you could look at some other transport choices for your business as well. If we look at the transport emissions for New Zealand, hopefully you've got the same page as what I've got. So it's 21% across the country. But if you look at most businesses and you track your own business, it typically sits around 40% of a business's emissions. And when you think about it, it's actually the easiest one to tackle. It's hard for you to change things like your building when you've got leases or you may own it. But if you've got a substantial fleet, it is around 40%, and that's going to be your easiest one to tackle. If you look at also the government's targets to hit our Paris agreements, we need to reduce our emissions by about 41%. And light vehicles, I'm presuming, is a big component of your fleet. And if you look, they are a massive contributor to the emissions profile as well, and a great opportunity. As Caroline said, I've been in the sustainable mobility and EV sector for a decade now, and there's just so much choice compared to what there used to be in the market as well. So it is a really good time to look at decarbonising. And this is really, often I talk to people around this. Most people think this is a green, sustainable option for the country, which it is, but the big opportunity is the financial opportunity. And that's what David alluded to earlier. If you make the right choices, it really stacks up from a financial sense. So for New Zealand, if we could make those steps to decarbonise our transport, over the next 5 years, that would save us $100 billion. So if we just step into how's that made up? So each year we spend $8 to $9 billion importing fossil fuels, mainly from Malaysia and Singapore. So that $8 to $9 billion leaves our economy. We also have annually a cost of around $10.5 billion on social costs. So that's the cost of hospital admissions, and it relates to 2,247 Kiwis that die from chronic diseases, which the scientists have attributed directly to our transport emissions. So it's substantially more than what we'd see in, say, road fatalities. So it's our chronic lung and heart diseases that we see our transport emissions having an impact on. Treasury also forecast in 2023 the Paris Agreement. The way we're tracking, we would be looking to pay around $20 billion in offsets come 2030. So it's a substantial cost for the country. The other reasons, if we just look at more micro ones, so the average household in New Zealand spends around $3,000 to $4,000 in fuel. And if you look at that on a household spend, that's $6.7 billion. Another really interesting study by Chapman Tripp and looking at our export partners. So 80% of our country's exporters are dealing with countries that have mandatory or impending climate disclosures. So we've seen that already from, if we've got some big businesses on the call today, the likes of Fonterra with Danone and Nestle, asking them to sincerely decarbonise if they want to continue to be a partner. So we're going to see more of that. And we're seeing some other businesses, IKEA is a great example, on their drive to make their sustainable products cheaper than their standard products. Silver Fern Farms, which are decarbonising. So there's some great examples in and outside of the country that are making those steps. And I also think, just from a consumer point of view, we're seeing over 80% of Kiwis now that are looking for the business community to do more around the financial impact. And as a Kiwi, it really makes sense for us. 87% of our emissions are renewable. So we're in this great position compared to the rest of the world as well. And I've just thrown this slide together just to look at the costs per 100 kilometres. And David touched on it, looking at PHEVs and ICE vehicles versus EVs. So if you're travelling 100 kilometres on an e-bike, it's going to cost you around 30 cents. If you're charging your EV at home, off peak, it's going to cost you around $3. And if you're charging it, say, on peak, maybe you're charging it at work, it's going to cost you around $6. And then a petrol car is going to cost you around $20. So just, and then if you're actually on a normal bike, it's not costing you anything. It's just a bit of pedal power. So it's quite astounding when, to David's point, you put these numbers in a total cost of ownership model and you look at around what is the most cost effective. And if we look at some global learnings, there's, you only have to look at the European market to see they are ahead of us compared to New Zealand. So we're seeing internationally, 69% of workers are more likely to accept jobs with sustainable organisations. So that green lens, and particularly for the younger generation, is becoming more and more important. We're also seeing businesses that have got sustainable mobility programs within their business have got an improvement in their retention, and that's up to 40%. And we also have seen in the US data coming out of there that employers are more likely to quit if they've got issues related to their commute. So looking at that scope 3 component is really important for those of you that are managing the fleet, but also transport options. And Shamima's going to talk more about that in her presentation as well. So, offering that sustainable commuting and active transport. Obviously, I've got a micromobility background as well, so I'm pretty biased on this. But it's great from a mental health, work-life balance as well, and that's something to keep in mind. If we look at globally and what's happening with other businesses, so Google. They've got targets to be carbon negative by 2030, and they've got some pretty impressive EV infrastructure that they've put in place globally. They've got luxury shuttles for staff with Wi-Fi, bike racks, and they're pet friendly. That's pretty impressive. SAP and Lufthansa, so they've got a monthly mobility allowance for employees, and they get choice. Boeing, they've got an emergency ride offer for staff that carpool and public transport, and other businesses have got things like adapted bikes for disabled staff and some subsidies in place as well. So there's lots of examples to draw on globally. And if we look at what's happening locally, WSP, great example, they've got an FBT exemption for their staff on micromobility. Zilch allows company cars to be, so that's like a leased vehicle, can be taken home after hours and booked by staff with an FBT exemption. Datacom offer free bike servicing for staff. With ASB, they've got a free home charger installation with staff. With EVs, Goodman Group, they offer a subsidy on personal EVs. Genesis, they were the first business in Auckland to have a subsidy on public transport, which Shamima will talk about that offering. Lockie Docs, that's obviously secure bike locking, and 2 Degrees offers work ride, as do a lot of other businesses now as well. So if we just look at some of the options and what that is going to cost you, what I've just touched on, if you're looking at something like providing an EV charger for staff, that's around $3,000. If you're looking at some sort of public transport subsidy, that's around $200 to $500. And we've got many businesses offering that FBT exempt bike subsidy as well for staff. So that's FBT exempt, and that can be anything a business wants, but typically they're coming at around $500 to $2,000. So the potential upside, I know we're racing on time. So as I've spoken about, there's incredible benefits just from a well-being, social, environmental, and also a financial side as well. So thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to some questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kirsten. That was really great as well, and some really useful information in there too. So thank you for participating today as well. If you've got questions about Kirsten's presentation, then please do put those into the Q&A and we'll discuss those at the during the Q&A panel at the end as well. But right now we'll move on to our final speaker for today, and that is Shamima Lone. So Shamima is the Business Development Manager for Auckland Transport's Fair Share programme, dedicated to helping employers subsidise public transport for their teams. And with a passion for sustainable transport solutions, Shamima has been instrumental in fostering collaborations that promote eco-friendly commuting options for organisations. So thanks very much for being here, Shamima. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Caroline. Kia ora koutou. I'm Shamima and I work for Auckland Transport and I look after the Fair Share program. I came on board in January last year to launch the program, and we opened it up in March to businesses to be able to sign up. So yeah, I'll tell you a bit about what it does, how it works, why people love it, and how it's going so far. So what Fair Share is a way for employers to subsidise public transport for their employees in a way that they don't have to pay fringe benefit tax. AT doesn't charge any admin fees for setting up and allowing you to run the program. So you're only paying for trips that your employees actually tag on and tag off with. How it works is pretty simple. You let us know what percentage you want to subsidise. We currently have 25, 50 and 75% options. And you also let us know whether you want to include the weekends on that. And lots of companies have also started on like a 25% and then lifted it to 50. Or, you could start at 50 and go to 75. So it's kind of flexible. You can kind of give it a go, see how it works. And then if you're comfortable with it, you can raise it. And how it works for the employee is that when we deliver the program to you, once we've set it up, it comes with a PDF invitation that you then send out to your staff, put somewhere on your intranet so they can access it themselves. And then the staff sign themselves up using their work email address to verify that they do work for you, and then their own registered hot card, which they can then use on the weekend if you haven't counted the weekends as part of the subsidy program, and it won't cost you anything. So once they've signed up, it'll work on bus, train and ferry. The only item of transport it doesn't work on is the Waiheke ferry or any other sort of concession or pass or anything like that. And then once a month, you get an invoice to say this is your bill, and that comes with a report that tells you a cost per employee. So if you're kind of wanting to see if anyone hasn't been coming into the office and they are racking up a bill, that's sort of how you would identify if there is any misuse, although we haven't come across anything like that yet. So it's pretty low risk. So some of the things that we know our clients are loving about Fair Share is that it is helping them meet climate obligations. We are seeing, as I'll show you soon, that when people have the subsidy, the number of public transport trips they take goes up. So it is having an impact and is lowering emissions. And we can provide data to you for being able to report on all of these sorts of things. We're also hearing that it's really cost effective. A lot of companies are saying, we thought it was going to be more expensive, and that's why quite a few of them are lifting it from like a 25 to a 50 or a 50 to a 75% subsidy. There's no FBT to pay. There's less pressure for car parks. So some businesses are getting rid of car parks, or they're getting rid of car parks and then bringing in Fair Share as like a sweetener of the deal. It's also a really great thing for improving culture around the office because you're helping people come into the office. If you are wanting to get people into the office more, it's something that can incentivize that. And it's also really easy and low risk. So as the administrator, you're not having to really do anything, just provide the invitation and people do the rest themselves. And also, there's no long-term commitment. So at any stage, you can revoke people from the program. So if someone was to leave the organization, it's really easy for you to disconnect their hot card that they can keep from your subsidy program. And at any time, you can also shut down the program, although nobody has left so far. So, we haven't had anyone do that yet. some information on the reporting that we provide. These are some key things that we have been providing our clients. So we can tell you an estimate of how many carbon emissions it hasn't, because your people are taking public transport, comparing it to if they were going to be driving in a single passenger vehicle. We can tell you the emissions savings. We can tell you what modes your employees took. We can tell you a total distance traveled. We can tell you how many trips were taken, things like that. So if you need to do your own breakdowns, you can. But the emission information that we give you is basically based on what kind of mode of transport it was, whether it was electric or diesel or whatever bus. And as AT moves to more electric vehicles, it'll keep updating as well. To give you a bit of a snapshot on where we're at with FareShare since it launched in March last year, I did a bit of a celebration post about this on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, so this data is from then. But yeah, we've had over 500,000 trips taken by people who are getting a subsidy from their employer. The people in total have travelled more than 5 million kilometres. We can see that there's about over 750,000 kgs of emissions that have not been released into the air because people have hopped onto public transport. We have just over 4,000 employees who are signed up. As of this morning, I have 69 companies signed up, and I now have a customer success lead who looks after my clients because it was getting a bit much for me to look after all of the clients myself. Who is FareShare the right fit for? So I'm finding that businesses who obviously have staff in Auckland, so we do have some companies who have staff nationwide as well, and also internationally, but they are still doing it in Auckland based on the commuting time being longer, congestion being worse, high cost of living in Tamaki, and also when national ticketing comes in, it'll be including a FareShare type subsidy program for each part of it as well. So you would be able to roll it out nationally as well. Also, another factor to consider is how well connected your office place is by our network. So the clients that we have come on board, mainly in the city, Newmarket, Parnell, Ponsonby, Grayling, all the kind of areas that are really well serviced by our network. And obviously, if your business operates during normal business hours and public transport runs well and frequently, and then also whether or not car parking is readily available and whether it's expensive or not. So in areas where it's scarce and expensive, it's obviously going to be more impactful to have public transport as an incentivized option. We now have some data to show that FareShare is having an impact, because we've got a lot of clients now, and we can sort of see the difference in a hop card that someone was using, and then it signs up to FareShare. We can now see that there is a difference that happens when somebody is getting a subsidy from their employer, and obviously the higher the subsidy, the higher that impact is. So on average, it's about 32.6% difference that the FareShare subsidy is having, but you can see here that when you're getting a 75% subsidy, it's increasing the number of trips being taken by employees by 53.5%. And even at 25%, it's increasing it by 18.6%, which is like not nothing. It's quite significant. So yeah, even businesses who've signed up at the 25 are experiencing a really positive shift in terms of sustainability. Yeah, so I will share some information about the Genesis case study. I'm sorry if you guys have heard about this one before. It's just the one that people mostly want to hear about. So Genesis actually came to AT and wanted to be able to do something like this, and we didn't have the program available at that stage in 2020. And so the whole genesis of this FareShare program was from them. And they were also moving office where they had a lot of car parks for most people to an area where they have like under 10 car parks. and they have 500 employees. And so they came on board on the pilot program along with 2 other companies to use a much clunkier version of the platform at the time. And they started on 25%. And they really wanted this move to mean a jump in sustainability, and also to try to keep their staff, retain their staff, and keep them happy as well. And most people were driving to work before this because they had car parks. So this data is a little bit old now because we were looking at it last year in April, which is over a year ago. So when we interviewed them in April last year, 68% of staff were saying that they now use public transport or active modes to come to work. And 76% of them said that they felt more encouraged to use public transport because of fair share subsidy. And in April last year, they had travelled more than 1 million kilometres. So might be up to 2 million now. I haven't checked, but yeah, it was having a significant impact on how people moved. And also when we went into their office last year to move them onto the new platform, we just got to experience a kind of cultural shift that was happening. And if people hadn't come by public transport that day, they were kind of embarrassed to talk about that. So yeah, it's a very positive thing for them. They were loving it. And you can kind of see the impact of the difference it's made from before fair share and fair share. So before fair share, people were travelling much more by private vehicles, which is the red. And then after 2023, they were travelling much more, 52%, by public transport. So yeah, it had a really big impact on them, and they're really happy. We have a cost calculator tool which we can share with anybody who wants to figure out what it might look like for them to come on board. We're hearing from a lot of businesses that it's overestimating the cost quite significantly. So we also have these stats here, the little table that we can share, because it's showing us what actual clients are paying per employee on the 3 different subsidy amounts. And so you can see it's about $22 a month per person on the 25% subsidy. So yeah, that seems to be quite affordable for a lot of companies. So if you haven't, so the data you need to be able to key into the cost estimate calculator relies on you having done some kind of staff travel survey, which our team can help you with if you needed. We have a team at AT called TravelWise for Business. Their whole mission is to help businesses get their staff to choose more sustainable ways of moving. It's not just public transport, it's also active commutes like bikes and e-bikes and walking and things like that. And they can help with a range of different services. So they could help do a travel survey for you. They do a Give It a Go hop card program where they could give you a hop card for your staff members loaded up with a pass so they could try it, just because a lot of people haven't taken public transport in quite some time. And maybe since they last took it to go to school or university or whatever, it's had like a huge change as we keep improving. And yeah, so it'll just kind of give people to potentially shift their mindset and change their behavior and how they think about moving. So yeah, if you did want to reach out to them, you can find TravelWise for Business on the AT website, or you can reach out to me and I can connect you. The steps to signing up to FareShare are pretty simple. I can help you with your business case if you need. I have resources, I have some case studies, I have the calculator. Yeah, I have some information I can share for your business case. Once that's given the go-ahead, I'll get you to sign a legal agreement, and then it normally takes about a month for us to actually create the program for you and deliver it to you. And then after that, we can come in and support you, do an activation session at your office, and you get a monthly invoice. All pretty straightforward. Here are my details if you'd like to get in touch. That's me and Kath my customer success manager. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you if anybody is interested to know more or wants to jump on board. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Shamima. Really appreciate that. It was really useful insight into your the program. That as a bit of a case study as well. So that's great. If I can get you to stop sharing your screen, Shamima, that would be great. And if David and Kirsten, if everybody would like to unmute yourselves, and we've got all of our cameras on, so that's great. We'll go into the Q&A. So if you have got a question for any of the speakers, please do put them through in the Q&A. That would be great. Just a reminder that the session is being recorded, and we will also share PDF versions of the slides as well. So you will have that information if you didn't quite catch people's contact details or any of the other bits of info that you're wanting from this. That will all be shared following this. So I have got a couple of questions already. One for David is, do you have examples of what fleets have saved by doing some of the tips that you present? Not necessarily saying that you'll have numbers off the top of your head, but have SmartTrack got examples of what fleets have saved, both in terms of emissions and potentially dollars as well, that you can share?
Yeah, well, we certainly have examples in terms of overall utilization. We're talking about in the region of 10 to 30%. We've seen some that can verify 17% better utilization, and that's just by using data, using the right systems to drive better utilization of the vehicles. So then there's downstream effects to that, which is less capital expenditure on new vehicles, better, CO2 emissions, and improved kind of sustainability targets right across the board, less maintenance, less admin time, so across the board you're kind of saving just by driving better utilization.
I can probably just add to that and say, most people think sustainability is about putting EVs into your fleet. But as David has said, actually rationalizing your fleet, looking at using your GPS to look at your utilization, and then using what you've got. It may be that you're getting more utilization out of your existing assets and decreasing the number that you have, and it may be keeping them an additional year and then moving to electric vehicles. So it isn't just a straight, I need to electrify your fleet. You need to go through those steps, which David has really well highlighted.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Kirsten. We've also had a couple of questions through Shamima along the same lines, asking whether if there's a subsidy scheme like Fair Share available elsewhere. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about national ticketing rollout and how it might work there, which I know you mentioned briefly, but also if you know anything about further afield or how people might be able to find out whether there's one in their area.
Yeah, if it's anyone from New Zealand, the national ticketing solution is definitely including Fair Share in the conversations. There's just a lot of grey area around what national ticketing will look like and what program it'll be using and things like that. So yeah, we are part of the conversation, and so it will be available with national ticketing as it rolls out, potentially not in its initial stages. But it's a little bit unclear about the timeframes as well. Outside of that, I know that there are a couple of cities across the world that do it. I haven't heard of anything in Australia. So it's kind of a new initiative, and I'd love for more cities to be able to do it because it's obviously moving the needle a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly worth, Genesis, you said, were the ones who came to you asking for something similar. So it's worth companies approaching their local councils to see if it is, or public transport providers to see if it is something that could be set up, and something similar over there as well. Great. Yes, Kirsten?
I was just adding, I think another really cool thing that Genesis did is they moved from having 242 car parks are made available to their staff, and when they changed offices, they made the commitment to obviously do the subsidy for public transport, and they did some other great subsidies as well. But the only person in the business that got an allocated car park when they moved office was the cleaner. And I think, socially, that's a really cool story. And if you're wanting to create change, everyone in that Genesis exec team used sustainable methods to get to work. So either public transport or cycling or scootering. So it was a real cultural shift that was led by the top. It was really impressive.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a fun fact. Yeah.
Thanks, Kirsten. Yes, that's great. They've done quite a few different things. Genesis, and it's been really interesting hearing what things they've done over that time as well. It's great. A general question for you all. I'm conscious of time, so if anyone's got any final questions, please send them through now. But one more general question is, what are you seeing in terms of the way things are evolving in your space, I guess, in relation to fleets, and how obviously things are still growing. Every time we've heard that from the Fair Share programme and the number of businesses who signed up and these things that are happening. What are you seeing as some of the key factors at the moment, or key things that are driving sustainability that in your area? If I start with you, Kirsten.
Well, in New Zealand, I know we've got some Aussies listening. Australia is ahead of the game when it comes to government policy and leadership around electrification. However, governments will come and go, and what we are seeing in New Zealand from our corporate customers is still that huge desire to reduce the Scope 1 emissions, and they're just starting to look at their Scope 3 emissions, so how staff are commuting as well. So I think that's positive signs from our large businesses in New Zealand.
Great. Thanks, Kirsten. David, I think from your...
Yeah, so I think there's been a slow shift away from probably a cultural kind of a piece in New Zealand where I guess most employees feel like they should, as part of their employment, have an allocated vehicle. Because of that, everybody has vehicles. We've one of the highest ownership of vehicles pretty much anywhere. And we have a surplus of vehicles across kind of fleets. So we are seeing that kind of shift, and partly driven because of sustainability targets and cost. But we are seeing a bit of a kind of a cultural kind of shift and moving a little bit more towards pooled or shared vehicles, fleets, for those businesses, and I think that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, David. Shamima?
The motivating factors for people coming on to Fair Share kind of vary. So it's kind of hard to know how to pitch it because different companies care about different things. But yeah, a lot of them are coming to Fair Share because they want to meet their climate obligations that they have. But then there's also businesses who want to improve their culture and offer something. And that's kind of cool because I think in this market, that's not really something that's necessary. But yeah, I have quite a few small businesses that have come on board quite quickly, who are, SME businesses, and they're quite nimble to come on board, and they don't have any obligations, but it's something that they genuinely care about. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Shamima, and thanks to all three of you for your insights. Really appreciate that. Thanks to everyone who put through a question as well. That's much appreciated. I'll just very quickly wrap up the session by telling you a few different things that we've got coming up. So hopefully you can see our events there that we've got coming up in the next couple of weeks. So we've got next up all of our events. The details are on the Global Fleet Champions website. On the 11th of November, we're running a joint seminar with AFMA in Auckland looking at fleet management, including safety, environment and technology. The winners of the 2025 Australasian Fleet Champions Award will also be announced in the evening at an in-person ceremony and dinner in Auckland, with the ceremony also available live online too. And our final webinar of the year takes place on the 27th of November, and that focuses on driver fatigue. So it'd be great to have you as part of that session too. And we're also holding a road safety forum with the Australasian College of Road Safety on the 5th of December in Auckland. And that event will cover a range of topics related to road safety, relevant to road safety professionals, health and safety professionals, emergency services, and anyone else with an interest in that area as well. And as a charity, many of you know, we rely on donations, fundraising, and our corporate partners to enable us to run all of our initiatives. So there are lots of ways you can get involved and support us. If you'd like to know more, please feel free to get in contact with me. So I hope you found today's webinar useful and interesting. Thank you again to all three of our speakers today, to our sponsors, SmartTrack, and to all of you for taking part. And we hope to see you at another event again soon.